the water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secrets.
Steve Zehngut, welcome to Founder Secrets.
Happy to be here. How are you?
Good. So I think that we're going to have a lot of interesting things to talk about since you've been in the tech space for 30 years now. Maybe a little over 30 years. And so we'll talk about some of the things that are going on in the space around AI, and also, you have deep background in WordPress. There's a little drama going on in the WordPress community, all kinds of topics there. But we'll start with an icebreaker. This one I think can be kind of fun. So we're all going to answer, which fictional character would make the worst mentor for your business, and what terrible advice would they give? So I'll go first. I think I used to watch Scooby-Doo a lot growing up. And I think that Scooby-Doo, we named our first dog Scooby. We had a dog named Scooby when I was growing up. And I think anything having to do with like detective stories or would be a terrible mentor. The way they track things down, it's very formulaic. I feel would be a terrible business mentor. So my fictional character would be the worst mentor would be Scooby-Doo, because I would listen, because, I listened to him as a kid and I was a big fan. And so I'd follow what they'd say, and that would make him a terrible mentor. The terrible advice, I guess the advice would be around eating all the time, or I guess I don't know what the advice would be, but it would be, I have a puppy now, I now bring up on every podcast, but I have a puppy and all she wants to do is eat. So I feel like that would be Scooby-Doo's advice.
There was a great phrase at the end of every episode that was like, if it would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for these meddling kids.
And yeah, I feel like Scooby-Doo would say something like that, and I don't think that would be helpful to me. So Scooby-Doo would be my answer. Flavio, which fictional character would make the worst mentor for you?
I love Scooby-Doo, but I think the Joker would also make a very bad business advisor. Like, let's see, so many things.
Now, are we talking about recent Joker or the Joker that I grew up with, which was Jack Nicholson?
Just the concept of the Joker in general, not a specific character. But one of the things he says, the problem with the world is that intelligent people are full of doubts while the stupid ones are full of confidence. And I think that's
pretty wise, actually.
Not a great, that's so wise, but bad business advice. I think you shouldn't call people stupid. And I think all people have doubts. And so, I don't think that intense way of running a business, while it may have been successful for the Joker temporarily, would be bad for me.
I love it.
What about you?
I'm going to go with Michael Scott from The Office. Yeah. I think he'd be a terrible mentor. So I think Michael's a classic visionary, right? Clearly needs an integrator, right? All he is just a big cheerleader, but he's a walking HR violation constantly. There's just so much stuff there. But I think the one period of time on The Office that really kind of sticks out in my mind is when he started his own paper company. Remember that when he went off and started the Michael Scott paper company? He made every mistake in the book, but I think the biggest mistake was hiring Ryan and putting him in charge of pricing.
That's right. Right.
But they went with fixed cost pricing. And they sold on price, and it was no focus on profit, and so they made every mistake in the book.
Which I think is how a lot of people before you really get into business, that's how I thought business was. It's a caricature of it, but it's kind of what a lot of people think of it as, I think.
Also, the way they sold the company back to Dunder Mifflin was completely botched. So
I love that. Bad advice there. So taking kind of step back, you started a company called Zeek in 1995. You may have started a tech company before anyone else we've had on the pod. You sold it recently, fairly recently.
Yeah, this January.
And so can you kind of speak us through from a high level kind of that journey from Zeek?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give you the quick origin story of Zeek, I actually started in the film industry. That's what I got my degree in. So I worked in the film industry for a couple of years, absolutely hated it, got out. I was always a computer nerd growing up.
Why'd you hate it? Everybody wants to be in the film industry.
God, no, it was terrible. I hated it. I didn't like the people. I love the industry itself. I love the creative aspects of the industry. I couldn't deal with the people. It was just too phony for me. And even at a young age, I was seeing the kind of the writing on the wall. And so I decided to pursue a career in computers because it was always something I was into. I didn't know what that meant at the time. Got a graphic design job. The web was just starting to form in 1994. It was just kind of becoming a thing. And so what I did is I wrote a business plan for my boss at the graphic design firm. I had been there a couple of years and pitched him ultimately what was the idea for my agency under his roof. I was going to do that as a division for his company. He loved it. I thought it was great, was ready to go. And all of his business partners said no. They just couldn't see the future. And so, when he told me that they weren't going to do it, I quit on the spot and started it on my own with no plan, no clients, no money, literally nothing, just a dream. And so I spent 2 years just talking to anyone that would listen about what the idea was and what I was trying to do. And then finally got my first gig around end of 1996, and then really never looked back.
How'd you get the first client?
Great question. So it was really all just building and nurturing my network. And so still had some connections to Hollywood. Digital Hollywood was the thing. It was kind of the thing at the time, like throughout the mid to late 90s, that was the big thing that was going on in LA. And so I was meeting with a lot of Hollywood clients. And so I led a user group at the time. I don't know if you guys remember.
Throwback.
Do you remember what Macromedia Director was?
I do. I used to use Macromedia Cold Fusion.
Cold Fusion, yes. So Director, I was a Director expert at the time. It's how I learned how to program. And so I was programming CD-ROMs and kiosks and multimedia, downloadable multimedia on AOL. Those are the kinds of things I was doing at the time. And so that turned into Shockwave, right? So Macromedia had a plugin called Shockwave. And so because I was, one of the few Macromedia developers that were out there, that's really what we focused on as an agency, was this online gaming and advergaming thing. That's kind of what was being formed. And so I led this user group for a nonprofit organization in Santa Monica called the LAMG, the Los Angeles Macintosh Group. Right. And so I led the Macromedia Director user group, SIG, it was called, Special Interest Group. Okay. And I did that once a month. And because it was a popular group, they had an annual conference in Burbank, and they gave me a booth just to show off my wares. And so what we did is we set up what was called the Shockwave Lounge, and I got a couple of old couches. I think that we found out of the Penny Saver. Craigslist wasn't a thing at the time, so literally just some used couches and this old rug, and we set up a little. It wasn't a booth. It was just a place for people to come and sit down and look at our stuff. We had a computer on a coffee table, and we were just showing people what we did. And the very last hour of the show on Sunday afternoon, this one lady sat down and I showed her what we were doing. And she said, "You know what? I need exactly this." And she called me into her office that next week, and she was working on marketing for the movie Multiplicity with Michael Keaton. And she said, I need an arcade for this movie. And that was our first paying contract.
You built an arcade?
We built 5 games for their marketing website for the movie Multiplicity.
In 97?
96, 97. Yeah, right around there.
Whoa. But they weren't real games. They're like games. They look like games in a movie.
No, they were games. So we built Shockwave games that were Multiplicity themed. The idea of the website was, you're stressed out, you need a clone. Like, that's the solution for it. You need a clone. So that's how they were selling the movie Multiplicity. And so these games were like stress tests. So they were meant to be like little stress tests to show you. At the end, it would have this little fake meter, and it would say, "Hey, you're this much stressed." And so, those are the marketing games we built for Multiplicity.
That's so cool. And then did you keep building more games? I feel like you could build a business on that.
Yeah, throughout the 90s, we probably built about 100 different advergaming projects. And then in early 2000s, formed ourselves into a full service web agency. But so, all throughout the 90s, we were building advergames.
And, I was in the agency space for 12 years, which 12 years is a long time in that business because it changes so much. I mean, to your point, you went from gaming to early 2000s, kind of web and whatnot. And I assume there were some other transitions. How did you keep up with the transitions, and how did you keep the kind of, not your positivity, but how'd you keep going? Not get over it?
Actually, I think that's a great question. I think it's a great way to put it, right? And so, technology is just something I've always been passionate about. And so I'm constantly learning and paying attention to trends and watching what's coming and staying up to speed on the next thing. But as an agency, we just kept growing and pivoting for whatever people needed, right? And so we probably pivoted 3-4 times over the course of 30 years as an agency, and just kept growing to offer different services based on what people needed. And so, a big part of that was just asking questions, right? Staying in the know and just asking questions and asking where we could be useful.
Like what kind of questions? How'd you figure
literally like, what do you, early on we were really doing marketing projects, right? And so it was, what kind of challenges are you having marketing? How are you, what sort of challenges are you having reaching people, right? How do you, rise above the noise, right? And so I was constantly having those conversations with my clients and, responding accordingly with what fit our set of services and our skills, right? And the other thing was, just constantly asking for referrals, right? And so we'd deliver a project and say, hey, do you know anybody else that would, benefit from these types of services?
So you were in that business for 28 years, right? And so congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
I mean, people talk about the 7 or 8 year itch.
Right.
You had like the 28 year, like really, really, amazing longevity as a business. And so you must have seen so many waves of like, oh, this is going to kill, right? Shockwave is no longer a thing, and Macropina, and then the next thing, and then Apple killed it. And then, And so what I'm wondering is like now everybody's saying that programming itself is kind of ending as ChatGPT can write it. So the value of say that service is going down and again it's going to go away. I guess do you think this time's different, or how do you view this change compared to all the other waves you've been through?
Yeah, great question. So I think and you nailed a couple of them, right? So I remember going to some sort of seminar in 1997 or 1998, right, where somebody actually stood up in front of the crowd and said something like the $1 million train, right? The $1 million valuation for companies, the $1 million train has already left the station, right? You can still get on the $100,000 train. Like those are the kinds of numbers that this guy was talking about. Like if you want to build a business right now on the internet, like you can still get on the $100,000 train, but you've missed the $1 million train, right? I don't think he predicted the $1 billion train, right?
Or $1 trillion train, no.
Or the $1 trillion, exactly, right? And I also remember right around the time, this was 1998, people saying that the web is a fad, the web is dead. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that the internet is dead or it's a fad. It happened in 2001 when the .com bubble burst, right? I lived through that. It happened in 2008 when the housing bubble burst, right? COVID was a little bit different. I don't think I heard those things because that's when people were really coming online. COVID was pretty good to the internet industry. But what I found is 2001 taught me a really good lesson, right? And so in 2001, in March of that year, that's when the stock market crashed, right? eToys was the first to go, and then pets.com, and then the dominoes fell, right? And overnight, everybody that was running a .com was broke. I have a friend that actually was employee number 6 at eToys, quit his agency job, took a very low salary, all for stock. And he was sending me photos of people running out of the building carrying a computer under one arm and an Aeron chair in the other, and stuffing it into their trunk. And what I did at that moment, I had a decision, because I had a couple of .com clients, not a lot of, we didn't do a lot of startups, right? But I had a couple of .com clients, and overnight I couldn't get anybody on the phone. Like nobody was returning my calls. And so, what I had to do at that moment is either quit, right? Find something else to do, or scale down and wait it out, because I had this sense that this was not going away, right? That this was a blip. And so what I did is one of the worst days of my life is I had to lay off my entire staff, very quickly. It was really, really tough. But I moved the company home. I moved into my garage. I gave up my office, laid off everybody, moved into my garage. The couple of clients that were still wanting to work had greatly scaled back, but I just made it work for a couple of years, scraped by. And by the time things started to emerge again, I was the only agency left. And so I just wrote it out. And when in around 2003, 2004, when things started to get busy again, my phone didn't stop ringing, just because, I was now at this point a 9-10-year-old agency, and all my competitors were gone. And so I just had a drive or moxie or gumption, or how, pick a word, right? Stupidity. I had this vision, I had this dream, and I got a little bit lucky. I just was able to write it out, and it was there. And so I know that was kind of a long-winded answer, but what I learned through all of that is that passion will help you get through those times, but also quality and execution always rises to the top, right? And so that was the other thing we always did really well as an agency is we took care of our customers, right? So we executed well, we had really good customer service, and we delivered quality work, right? And so in any phase of my business, and I've seen lots of them, right? Execution always matters, right? And so to your last question was about, is this time different? Can AI write code, right? Or is coding dead? Are developers a thing of the past? My answer is no. And here's why, is AI is just a new tool. That's all it is, right? It'll help make you faster. It'll help you make you more efficient, right? There's going to be probably less jobs for junior coders because AI can do that job, right? But AI can't really create, right? It'll do what you instruct it, right? And you can prompt it better. And I know it can start to feel like it's starting to think because it can start to prompt itself, but it can't really create. And I use AI for my own coding now. But even now, AI can only get you so far. You need somebody that has the experience and the experience with execution, right? To drive AI and get it to do get the output that you want. Does that answer?
Well, I think that there were a lot of answers in that are helpful for. Okay, so if somebody started a business in 2018, they've never really seen a downturn if they're in tech. So 2020, to your point, was actually quite good for a lot of tech companies. And they've never lived through these things that you're talking about, where your business drops 90%. I had an agency in 2008. I saw some of what you're talking about, but it still was not as drastic as what you moved, you laid everybody off, moved into your garage. And those times will come back at some point. Nobody knows when, but those times will come back. And I'm curious, if you go back to that moment, how did you actually know that it was going to turn out okay, right? Because another option would have been just shut the whole thing down and go and do something else. Like, how'd you know?
I didn't. I just took a risk. I didn't. What I knew is I knew that the internet was not a fad, right? All the people that were saying the internet was a fad, and that was, if you looked at the news in March of 2001, that was it. That was how they proved their point, right? The internet was a fad. It blew up. It was a good experiment, and now we're going to move back to traditional media, right? No. Not so fast, right? There were a lot of things. There's a lot of good things here, a lot of good indicators that the internet is not a fad. So it definitely was a risk, but I was a risk I was willing to take just because I'm a visionary. I could sort of see the future and how you apply these things and how it changes things like TV and communications and the phone and radio and right. Pick a thing that the internet has revolutionized.
But do you have that same view? Because one could argue, people are saying the same thing about AI today. That they're saying AI is a fad. It was drastically, to your point, it doesn't create anything. It's drastically overblown, and hype men are pitching this as the new thing, but it's not actually useful. So do you how do you view that through the lens, your technology lens and the wisdom that you've kind of accumulated?
It's not a fad at all. And so I want to think about 2005 to 2010, right? That was the social media boom, right? And so social media, anybody that had a social media company, like that was the latest, greatest thing. And again, people were calling it a fad, right? It's gone through a complete evolution, right, over the past 15 or 20 years, right? But social media is just now woven into our being, right? Social media is not what it started out as, right? We're not all using Facebook the way it was originally intended, right? But we have all the features of Facebook or Twitter or pick a social media platform just woven into every platform that we use, right? It's what we expect. We expect likes, we expect reviews, we expect a wall, right? All those things that were proven in the social media phase are now just those are table stakes for anything that we're building. And so I think AI will go through the same evolution, right? Right now, what's the site? There's an AI for that. If you look at that, there's tens of thousands of AI platforms and ones that pop up every day, right? We're now in the infancy. Right. And so a lot of those will fizzle out, go away. Some will survive. Right. But the features that they're proving, that some of those sites are proving, will just be sort of woven into our software and our platforms in the future. It'll just be AI will become table stakes. right, for our next evolution of platforms.
Speaking of likes, be sure to like this
like
Instagram
subscribe.
and YouTube. So click subscribe. But
That what you just said, that's it. That comes from YouTube, right? And now we do that everywhere, right?
Totally.
But 20 years ago, that wasn't a thing.
So in a way, one might say that maybe you do think this time's different because you did decide to get off the train and sell. So I guess I'm wondering why did you sell?
Yeah, great question. I actually didn't get off the train. I sold really not for the money. I just sold for personal reasons. 30 years is a long time. And so for me, it was time for me to just turn the page and do something else in the second chapter of my life, right? I had a very long first chapter of my life. I was in my first startup for 3 decades. And that I know that's rare. And so running a services business is tough. It can be difficult and trying. And when you're running an agency, and you have an issue, with anything, with a client or an employee or, payroll or cash flow or any of that stuff, you just carry that stuff with you all the time. And to be honest with you, it was just weighing on me. And so it was really, for my own, really to protect my own mental health. I just needed to turn the page. I am still very involved in this industry. This is still very much an industry I believe in. I just didn't want to run an agency anymore.
Well, totally understand that. I only did consulting agency type work for a little bit, and I still have calls occasionally from people be like, "Oh, hey, this website, like, what's the password for the Bluehost?" Like, I do not want to do it. But
let me just expand on that a little bit. I mean, I was starting to really see the impacts of some of the decisions I was making to let the agency control my entire life. Right, it was impacting my relationship. It was impacting my marriage. It was impacting my kids. And now that I'm a little bit older, I could see that, right? And I didn't want that for my life. And I'm the kind of person that, I will personally own a problem if a client calls me. If it gets escalated, right? I can't shut it off. I can't shut that part of my brain off, right? And so somebody needs something. I am still the kind of person after 30 years that will drop everything and go address this thing, even though it should be delegated. And so that just wasn't good for me.
Can you expand on because I felt this too. Can you expand on that, the downside of you took it, not necessarily you took it personally, but that it consumed your life? Was it because the agency, was it the money, like carrying the payroll, like you said? Was it the people issues? Was it the clients, or just the you wanted to grow? Like, what was it that really consumed it all?
God, if I had to pinpoint one thing based on what you asked, I would say my reputation, right? That was really a driving force for me, for a long, long time it wasn't necessarily the money. If somebody would call me, I think what would be in the back of my mind is, okay, I've got a reputation to protect for both myself and this agency, right? And so we've always executed better. I don't want any marks on my record that to the contrary of that. And so that was always the driving force for me.
So a couple more. I guess I'm wondering, going back to the change of the industry, some people are saying that the way we interface with the web will be differently. Sure, the web's still going to be there, but instead of, say, me going to kayak.com or some other person's website that you might have helped build, next website or these other websites, but that is going to change. It's not going to be that way anymore because Apple has AI now. It'll interface into the back end of these websites, or even bypass them in terms of Kayak. Kayak just aggregates, the airlines and like a car rental or a hotel. So then Apple can just connect to those directly. So I'll just say on my phone, like, hey, book me a hotel for visiting Taylor in Orange County. And it'll just do that without using Kayak, without paying them a fee. So it just completely annihilates these middleman business models of all these people, all these websites that had to be built for all these middlemen that we would go and click on and go around and choose stuff. That's over. That now we kind of bypassed that. And again, the web's still there. That's how it all works. But that these kind of middleman websites are going away. I guess, what do you think about that?
I think that Google has been shifting that for at least a decade, right? And so if you look at what has happened with the way you search on Google over the past decade that the websites have just become more and more irrelevant, right? Now, when I say irrelevant, I mean the value of somebody going and visiting your website has become more and more irrelevant. Feeding the machine, right? Feeding Google is still very critical, right? And so you can still build a brand and build a website and still have a data play, right? If you understand how people ultimately consume data these days, right? And so I think what you're describing, the Siris and the Alexas of the world and the AIs of the world are still pulling data from whatever machine, right? Right now it's Google, right? Could be something different in the future, right? All of the content providers still have to feed that machine. And so I just think it's shifting away from, let's say, website design, right? More into SaaS or a data play. And so I think there's even more relevance these days on a database design, database optimization, data architecture, right? Those things are very critical because you have to understand how Google and AI and all these machines ingest the data from whatever your source is. And that will also grow and evolve over time. But content creation, I don't think goes away. You're just doing it. These days it's being done differently and it's continuing to evolve.
Interesting. Like the content you're creating these days has to be more for a machine audience than a human audience.
Yeah. And again, I think anybody who's really paid attention over the past decade, I don't think that's new.
Right.
I just think that agencies, lots of agencies that I've talked to have not evolved, right? And they're still selling websites, right? And that's
still selling pretty things.
Yeah. And if I was going to start an agency today, which I'm not, I will never start an agency again. But if I was going to start an agency today, right, it wouldn't be selling pretty things. Like I think Taylor just put it perfectly, right? Because that's not what is valuable anymore.
What would you be selling?
Data, right? Content creation and the ability to move that content into the machines as efficiently as possible.
We just launched at Newsletter, we just launched our CSV exports, which to your point is to export structured data into Excel, but really they're like putting it in other platforms. And it's rapidly become one of our most used features, I think for the reasons you said. So I want to shift gears a little bit to, you have a lot of experience in WordPress. And for those who don't know, WordPress is the most widely used CMS in the world, content management system in the world. It drives something like 50 to 60% of websites.
It's 43. The last stat is 43% of all websites. So nearly half of the websites are run on one platform.
And it's been around a long time. It's open source, meaning not just that it's free, but all the source code's available. And that's an important distinction because over the last, 3 to 4 months, but in some people's eyes, over the last maybe 8-10 years, there has been some rumblings about WordPress as a whole. Now, I know that you're connected to WordPress. You've been involved in WordCamps, these kind of local groups of WordPress people that meet. You were tied to it in the agency. From a high level, can you just there's some drama going on in this space, which impacts a lot of people because to your point, 43% of websites. What is kind of the drama that's going on in the WordPress sphere right now?
So there's plenty of information out there about the timeline of everything, but I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what's happened over the past few months, right? So, and this is, I think you alluded to it, right? This is stuff that we've known within the WordPress community for years. Right. But now it's getting more public because of certain actions that have been taken over the past couple of months. And so there was a pretty public dispute between Matt Mullenweg, the creator of WordPress, and Engine, which is the leading WordPress host. I don't need to get into the details of the dispute. And frankly, I don't have a horse in that race, so it doesn't really matter. That's being settled by the courts. There's a very public lawsuit that's happening there. And again, those things happen between business entities all the time, right? That's not out of the ordinary. But two things happened that I think were important and which made me really take notice and have some conversations with other agency owners is in the middle of the dispute between Matt and WP Engine, Matt pulled a lever within the WordPress software and turned off a feature for all of WP Engine's customers. Now, it didn't necessarily take down their website. He turned off the ability to update plugins and themes, but he he from the mothership, he flipped a switch and turned off a feature which affects 1.5 million websites. That's the approximate number that WP Engine hosts, right? And so that really what happened is he took action that affected the site owners, and that's where I sort of took that. That's new within our space, right? There's been disputes before, but that was something new.
It's a personal vendetta. You like leverage in a way that hurts people who weren't involved at all. These 1.5 million people didn't make a decision that was against Matt or
Correct.
WordPress. They were just kind of byproduct. It's a very, I used to build on WordPress sites myself. I was a WordPress customer WP Engine customer for a very, very long time in my last business and in this one. And it is, to me, as an independent person, it's a very offensive. I don't know if offensive is the right word, but it's a very draconian kind of tactic.
Yeah. The second thing that happened was when it got, which I think took it too far, right? So WP Engine has a couple other business units, and they have a business unit where they have some premium plugins that they sell within the WordPress space. It's one of the most popular plugins that's out there. I use it. It's called Advanced Custom Fields, and it essentially lets you customize meta boxes within the dashboard. So it gives you an extension to the CMS is what it does. Really great plugin. But Matt also decided that he wasn't going to allow WP Engine to have that plugin in his marketplace any longer, right? So they have there's two versions of the plugin. There's a free version and then a paid version, but people use the marketplace to get free downloads and then upsell into the premium version. Not only did he take it out of the marketplace, actually he didn't do that at all. He took over the plugin as his own. And so literally just took the plugin, changed the name, made it his own. He kept the 2 million users that they had. He kept the reviews. He kept the permalink within the marketplace. He just took it. And that's the one that worries me the most. Apparently there's another dispute that hasn't happened yet, but that with a different premium plugin that's outside of the WP Engine, that it's a whole different company that he's threatened to do the same with. And so my concern is that, I mean, you mentioned it, right? With the first action, the site owners and the end users actually paid the price, right? In this case, this is the people that are, within the WordPress ecosystem that are running businesses that are now at risk. And so ultimately the conversation I've had with people about this is a new risk. It just exists, right? There's not much we can do about it. And again, I'm not taking sides. Just need to be aware of the risk if you're running a WordPress site or if you're doing business within the WordPress ecosystem.
I think it's also important to note that WordPress is owned by, depends on who you ask, but there's a company called Automatic that is a very large company, has thousands of employees. It's a large company. And this company happens to own a direct competitor to WP Engine.
Yes. They own
There's a very large conflict of interest.
Yeah. Well, and that's, again, we could spend the whole podcast talking about that. There's two entities. There's Automatic, which is the for-profit organization, which owns WordPress.com and an interest in another hosting company called Pressable. And WordPress VIP. So they own 3 hosting companies, right? And then there's a nonprofit, which is the WordPress Foundation, right? That Matt is also the chairman of. And so again, the whole conversation about the conflict of interest has been exhaustively debated on the internet, and so there's plenty of information out there. And again, that I choose not to take sides there. That's not what's important. What I care about is my clients, my former agency's clients, my friends, any site owners that I know, and plugin developers that I'm associated with.
Well, switching gears a bit, as I haven't used WordPress in like 20 years, so
still out there.
The thing I want to say is this, right? So
GeoCities founder has some pet peeve with Google.
I mean, here's the thing. People have asked me, like, should I still build on WordPress? Should I start a WordPress site? I'm like, yeah, WordPress isn't going away, right? It's maintained by thousands of developers. It's the largest open source project ever, right? It's not going anywhere. It's still a great piece of software. This is just something that you have to be aware of.
A great piece of software that apparently gets hacked like all the time with all like these PHP scripts or whatever.
That's getting better though.
Yeah, we could have that debate all day. We'll have a part 2 to this podcast. So we get to that.
You've been in Orange County. Seems like, how long have you been in Orange County?
25 years.
It seems like you built a business there, stayed there. And I'm wondering, a lot of kids these days kind of move different places for opportunities, whether it's Silicon Valley, New York. And it seems like you've been able to grow. I guess, what would you advise kind of young people these days looking at business, wanting to go where the action is versus you, where it seems like you've built that community around where you live? And what would you advise them?
That's a great question. So, I built the WordPress OC meetup simply. Actually, the reason it was built is because at the time we had a bunch of overflow work, and I had nobody to refer to. And so I was just trying to start a group of people, find a group of other developers that I could outsource work to. That's literally how the meetup was founded. And so I don't know that where you live matters as much as it used to. I think in recent years we're used to meeting on Zoom, right? We're now meeting remotely is now very commonplace, right? And so when I was first starting this business and first growing my business in Orange County, we met face to face. Like my clients wouldn't meet over the phone, right? And so I don't know that matters as much, right? What's key about the meetup that you're asking and about me, just being in Orange County or being in any, I used to live up in the Valley, so I originally started the business in LA. What's key is building a network, whatever that means for you. Right. That's key. That's the advice I give to anybody that's getting into starting a business. Is it's all about the network, right? Whether you're going to leverage it for sales or referrals or partnerships or just help. Right. Building a network is just key to business. And I didn't invent that. My dad taught me that. My dad was the master networker, and so that's where I get it from.
So as we kind of round out here, people are especially since 2020, more and more people are looking, to your point, the location's less important. So they're looking to either hire someone outside maybe their local area, or they're looking to hire someone in India, the Philippines, or Colombia, or wherever. And if they're looking to hire technical talent, you've worked with teams all over the place. Do you have advice, because you've successfully led in-house, external, and others, do you have advice for managing these teams effectively?
Sure. And to be honest with you, I was the last holdout in our company for going remote. We went remote about 5 years before COVID, so we were all already set up. But I was the only one that was resisting it. My employees were the ones that were driving it. They were telling me that they didn't need to come into the office. They were more productive when they were working from home. And so I just tried it as an experiment, and luckily saw the results of it very quickly. Like the efficiency went through the roof without requiring people to come in the office. As a matter of fact, for the last year of my lease, I was sitting in a 2,500 square foot office alone. So once I gave up that office, it was a game changer for us. But those things that we used to do at the office, right? I was able to sort of bring those online, right? So in the office, we had an environment that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of energy, right? And so sometimes that gets forgotten about online. And I think there's a lot of things you can do to still encourage that, right? So at Zeek, they still to this day have this, but one of the things that I had was we'd have a weekly or even daily stand-up. But our weekly stand-up wasn't about work. It was every Monday morning, what'd you do over the weekend? Let's do an icebreaker, right? It was a get to know you thing. We'd get the team together at least once a year, if not twice. Try to get the management team together every quarter, right? And we did a lot of things that were in person. And again, those events weren't. We do a little bit of business, but a lot of it was just team building and fun, right? And so any of those team building activities are critical because I want to get to know and like the people that I'm working with, right? Because those are the people I'm spending a lot of time with. As far as tools go, we use probably the same tools everybody else uses: Slack, Zoom. Teamwork was our project management system, but constantly on Zoom. And our team was trained that if they're stuck or just have a question or need to brainstorm or just need to talk to somebody, Zoom is always there. It's just a click away, and there's somebody that can hop on a Zoom with you and discuss something. So,
well, that's great. Yeah. As we wrap up, we do this every time. We ask kind of what's a life hack that you recommend others. I'll go first, then Taylor, and we'll end with you, Steve. Have you guys heard of Mark Cuban's prescription drugs thing? Mark, cost plus drugs.
Cost plus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I started using it, and I'm a big fan. And especially the big hack is not just that, which is a cheap price, because you still got to get a prescription. And I use Ro, this online pharmacy, to get a prescription. And usually they try to charge it to their own pharmacy. But the hack is that you can get Ro, which is a free doctor kind of consultation and prescription, and then tell them to send the prescription to Mark Cuban's pharmacy. And so Ro is a free service, and then they send it to the pharmacy, and I get it cheap in the mail, and that's the hack. So of getting that I found to get
you can do
cheap.
any kind of prescription. I guess with supports.
Ro supports a few, and then Mark Cuban supports almost all, mostly kind of generics, but all the common sort of prescriptions. But yeah, Ro would write the prescription, or Hims, or one of these. Of course, you can always go to a doctor and do it like the old-fashioned way, but kind of this is quicker over like chat in an app. So that's the hack. All right, Taylor, you want to go?
That's a good hack. I like it. So my hack is that there's, continuing my theme of I show iOS things like once or twice a month, but there's the new iOS 18.2 beta. So this is the one that includes kind of Apple Intelligence. 18.1, I think, just rolled out publicly a week or so ago. But what I found most interesting is that the AI summaries are, I can't see it on here, but the AI summaries are shockingly good. It summarizes. So for instance, here's an example. Flavia will text me 5 messages in a row, and it summarizes it in a way that is 1 or 2 sentences, but it does a great job of extracting the actually useful information. It doesn't just summarize it for the point of summarizing it. It says, Flavia wants to meet for basketball at 3 at Washington Square Park. But that was part of 5 different messages, and there were other things also in the message, and it does a shockingly good job of extracting the useful information. I've been in this beta for a couple of months. It did not used to be this good. It's gotten better, and they're refining the models clearly over time. And it appears, they claim that it's doing all of it on device. So it's doing these, it's not going to the cloud. It's apparently all doing it on the device, which is quite interesting. So if you're a kind of nerdy type person, anybody can sign up for the beta, by the way. You can it's in the settings to be able to sign up for the iOS beta, and you can sign up for the Apple Intelligence waitlist too. They accept you pretty quickly. And so my hack is that this is going to come to everybody, but the hack is that the AI summaries and some of the AI features that Apple is doing are actually useful versus some of the things we talked about in this pod are like, well, is that actually going to happen or be good? So I can recommend the Apple Intelligence stuff, at least that I've used so far. What about you, Steve?
I've got 2. So technology-wise, and I'm going to sound like the old guy in the room, I bought a Sleep Number bed, and it was a game changer, right? And so I cannot, I wish I could go back to my younger self and talk about how important sleep was, right? Especially those years that I was pulling all-nighters, trying to build a business, right? And so sleep is critical, and the Sleep Number bed has been a game changer for us. So I really like that. The other hack is, and this really comes from my wife, is and a little bit of EO as well, is I try to switch my language and my thinking when there's things to do from I have to I get to, right? And so trying to work more gratitude into my thinking and into my language. And so that's a practice I've been doing lately.
I love it. Two awesome ones. Well,
that's a great note to end on.
Yeah, can people reach out to
you? I don't participate in social media a lot. Probably LinkedIn is the best way to find me. I do respond on LinkedIn. I don't do a lot of Facebooking or Xing anymore. Really never did. I don't know if you want an email address, but the email's fine. Is steve@zengy.com, Zengy. There you go.
Love it. Thanks so much
for joining us, Steve.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavio. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.